There we go. Is that better?
Yep.
Okay. Sorry. Might do a 1-minute overview. Okay. I'll just go back to these three guys. We're going to be looking in Genesis chapter 9, the last portion of it from verse 18 on, I think, through 11. And we're looking at these three sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And one of these three is your great-grandfather, and the other two are great-uncles somewhere along the line. So the one thing that got off the boat, was the depraved heart of mankind. And that's all the result of Adam's fall, and that certainly survives the waters of the flood. And just for your information, I don't know if I put this in your note paper there or not, but it will be 52 more generations from Noah before man's sin is dealt with by the Messiah. Okay? So there's a total, Romans 6:23 says, "For the wages of sin is death, but the free gift of God is eternal life in Christ Jesus our Lord." Okay, that's Romans 6:23. So, just to refresh your memory, from Adam to Noah, there are 10 generations. Let's break this down. From Noah to Abraham, 10 generations. From Abraham to David, there's 14 generations. From David until the carrying away into Babylon and the destruction of the first temple, 14 generations. And from that carrying away to Babylon to when Christ came, when Yeshua came, there's 14 more generations. So from Adam all the way down to Yeshua, a total of 62 generations of people. Okay? And,
I'm sorry.
yes, go back. Yep. I said 52 generations from, I knew somebody was going to catch me on that. You're so sharp. From Noah to the Messiah. But it was 10 generations from Adam to Noah. So 52 plus 10, okay?
I missed that damn math.
Yeah. Okay. Is that good? Okay, ta-da. All right. So Noah begins again. So one of the things we're really learning is, in God's economy, there are several new beginnings. He begins again. Aren't you glad He's the God of new beginnings? Yes. Because if He wasn't, where would we all be? You know, every one of you have had your own personal new beginning from God after you were born. It's called being born again, right? So, Noah began, after Noah gets off the boat, his new beginning, he began to be a husbandman or a farmer, okay? And he planted a vineyard. Okay, that's where he gets started. And so I think what we're going to do is have, Steve, you got a microphone there? Okay, why don't you read chapter, and I promise you, we're not going to read all of today's portion because it's just a bunch of names and numbers, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But this part is important. So 9, 17, 18 to the end of the chapter, if you would, please.
The sons of Noah who came out of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham was the father of Canaan. These were the three sons of Noah, and from them came the people who were scattered over the whole earth. Noah, a man of the soil, proceeded to plant a vineyard. When he drank some of its wine, he became drunk and lay uncovered inside his tent. Ham, the father of Canaan, saw his father naked, told his two brothers outside. But Shem and Japheth took a garment and laid it across their shoulders. Then they walked backward and covered their father's naked body. Their faces were turned the other way so that they would not see their father naked. When Noah awoke from his wine and found out what his youngest son had done to him, he said, "Cursed be the Canaan, the lowest of slaves will he be to his brothers." He also said, "Praise be to the Lord, the God of Shem. May Canaan be the slave of Shem. May God extend Japheth's territory. May Japheth live in the tents of Shem, and may Canaan be the slave of Japheth." After the flood, Noah lived 350 years. Noah lived a total of 950 years, and then he died.
Okay. So there's a lot of kind of disjointed information that covers a lot of time in those few verses. And what the Bible gave us was kind of the PG rating of it. We could go to the PG-13 rating, or we could go to the R rating, or we could even go to the X rating. And I spent some time in this looking at a lot of different articles about this week, and I just almost didn't want to even go there today, but we're going to go there somewhat. So let's see what happens. All right, so Noah had some wine. Okay, well maybe he had a little bit too much wine. Okay, have you ever had a little bit too much wine?
Yeah.
Oh. Who said yeah? Who said that? Oh, Maria. And she's a doctor. She knows. Yeah. Okay. Huh?
It's wonderful because it's the moment that you are open and you lose the prejudice and all that. And
yes.
It's
There's a point. There's a point that wine can take you, and that's a wonderful place to go, but you just don't want to go over the line. Okay, right?
Recordings.
Oh yeah.
Oh boy.
Okay. Well, if we were to go into the now to come back to the class, if we were to go into the Hebrew of this, he drank of the wine, and he was drunken, and he was uncovered within his tent. So that word uncovered is galah. Okay, and the stem that it's in, there'll be a test on this later, so pay attention, is the Hithpalel, imperfect, okay, and it literally means it's called, he did this himself. He uncovered himself. Okay, nobody did it to him. He uncovered himself. So let's see where that goes.
It's hot out in the desert.
It's hot out in the desert. I know. Yep. Okay. So at any rate, he winds up looking kind of like this guy. Okay. He's just a little bit across the line. Now let's see what else the Bible has to say about wine. We go to Proverbs 20 and verse 1. It says, "Wine is a mocker, and strong drink is a brawler, and whoever is led astray by it is not wise." So who has woe, who has sorrow, who has contentions, who has complaints, who has wounds without cause, and who has redness of eyes? Those who linger long at wine, those who do not search, who go in search of mixed wine, do not look on the wine when it is red, when it sparkles in the cup, when it swirls around smoothly. At the last it bites like a serpent and stings like a viper, and your eyes will see strange things, and your heart will utter perverse things. Okay?
Wow.
So if you've ever been around somebody who's just gone way over the line, I mean, they do. They lose all inhibitions, and pretty soon crazy stuff is coming out of them. And pretty soon really crazy stuff is coming out of them, and pretty soon perverse stuff is coming out of them. They don't call alcohol spirits
For nothing.
for nothing, okay? Because there's something in the ether world that will attach itself to you. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with drinking wine with dinner, but not to the extent of drunkenness. Okay, drunkenness, it's not pretty, and it's not attractive, and it's not good for anybody. However, wine will take you to a place where it's joy. There is something, this wasn't planned, okay. But there's something about drinking a glass of wine with dinner, and I agree totally with Maria. It will take you right to the point of joy, right? It's just, you don't want to go over the hill, right? Am I wrong? I mean, and I realize that some people have trouble with alcohol, and for them, no. Drink some grape juice and have a good time. But for the largest part of the population, wine is just, it's a joy. Okay? I had a father who wound up being an alcoholic, and I can tell you, it's not a pretty thing to watch. Okay? So don't go too far. And especially if you happen to have an addictive personality. Some people are more easily addicted than others. Everybody say, sugar is not good for you, right, Joel? Sugar is not good for you. Going on a 2-week no sugar thing. Okay. All right. So the sin was not in drinking the wine. The sin was in drinking to the extent of being drunk. Okay. Drinking wine, that's fine. Getting drunk, that's not fine. Okay. All right. Well, that was Noah's first problem. And granted, everything on the earth had changed. The air pressure was different. All that things taken into consideration were all different. And maybe no one had ever been drunk before. Maybe that makes sense. Very possible. So regardless, if we were to go to Leviticus 18, because there was some kind of a sexual misconduct that was going on here. Leviticus 18 is our go-to chapter about prohibitive sexual matters, if you will. And at verse 6, Leviticus 18, it says, "None of you shall approach any one of his close relatives to uncover nakedness," which is the term that was used there with Noah. The phrase "to uncover nakedness" is clearly a euphemism for sexual intercourse. Okay, so new beginnings and the integrity of the family, and for this reason a husband and wife shall become one. I mean, that's the whole reason for husband and wife to come together. Drunkenness is condemned. Noah was uncovered in his tent. In the reflexive stem, he uncovered himself. Well, I already said that once. I said it again. So the big question was, in my studying this week, was Canaan involved in homosexual behavior? Lots and lots of opinions out there, whatever. Noah does not curse Ham, who's the one who discovered him. He curses Canaan, okay? He curses the son, Canaan. 17 times in Leviticus chapter 18. 17 times, that's quite a few. Moses uses the phrase "uncover the nakedness of" as an idiom for sexual intercourse, and particularly the sin of incest. So the list of illicit sexual activity in Leviticus 18 includes homosexuality, bestiality, and incest. Okay? Whether a man commits the sin with his mother, his stepmother, his sister, his granddaughter, his stepsister, his aunt, his daughter-in-law, or his sister-in-law, all such liaisons are forms of depravity according to Leviticus 18. Okay? In each case, the phrase "uncover the nakedness of" is used in each one of these cases here. Okay? That's why we have these natural taboos in family. We don't have to discuss them. They're just there, right? Lots of opinions as to what happened. Okay? Adam was naked. At first he was naked, he was nude, and he didn't think anything of it. And later, after the little incident with the serpent, he knew he was naked. Now he knows he's naked. He knows he's like the serpent, if you remember what those words meant. God made a garment to cover Adam, and man has been wearing clothing since being kicked out of the garden. You don't see too many. I mean, I know you see a few, what do they call them, that run across the football field? Streakers. And in some continents, I guess you'll see people that don't wear clothes, natives that don't wear clothes or something. But for the most part, 99.9% of the people on this planet are wearing some kind of clothing. And it's been that way since we got kicked out of the garden. Huh? By God's grace, thank you, Lord. Yes. Shopping wouldn't be fun if we didn't do that, right? Okay, so Noah here was naked, and Noah had a garment and sons, Japheth and Shem, put it over him, and they did not look upon his nakedness. They backed in. It's almost, it's kind of like what this reminded me of. The only thing, and I didn't follow through on it, but what it reminded me of was in the Holy of Holies. I don't have the picture up, but in the Holy of Holies, when the priests went to move the Ark of the Covenant, nobody ever saw the Ark of the Covenant. Nobody ever saw the Ark of the Covenant. They would go in and they would take the curtain and they would lay it over the top of the Ark of the Covenant, right? The blue curtain from the veil, and lay it over the Ark of the Covenant. Nobody ever saw that. And somehow that's what this kind of reminded me of. These guys backing in and laying a garment over their father. These two sons would not they wouldn't take part in any talk of it. It's like Ham discovered what was going on with Noah and, I don't know, I would vote for Canaan. Something went on with Canaan. And he's going out and he's fighting his brothers. You're going to talk about it. You're going to yammer about this. And these guys, Shem and Japheth, said, stop. We're not going to participate in this gossip. Come here, let's go cover him up, okay? And that's not so with Ham. He wanted to make this a big discussion. Okay, let me get rid of this. Okay. All right. So Shem and Japheth show honor to their father, but Ham did not. I guess that's the point of this. And hang on, we're almost done. All right. It's uncertain what the precise nature of Ham's offense was. Verse 22 says it has been a subject of debate as to whether it should be taken literally or as a euphemism for some act of gross immorality. You've got a Joel, do you have a close-up on these slides? This needs to be a close-up so the people watching can see it. Okay. Verse 25, Noah names Shem and Japheth as the brethren. And why is Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh named as the God of Shem but not the God of Japheth? I don't know. These are questions. What does it mean that God will enlarge Japheth? And why will Japheth dwell in the tents of Shem? And something tells me I just put that backwards. Did I put that backwards? Did I get Dutchy on myself?
No.
Is that right?
That's right.
Japheth will dwell in the tents of Shem?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Why that is, I don't know. Does anybody have any?
Shem's a good guy.
Shem's a good guy? Japheth is a good guy?
Shem got the firstborns. He got the right of the firstborn.
It's the blessing is going to, yeah, that's true. The blessing is going to Shem. And this is the first incident of a curse in the Bible, of a curse from a human to a human in the Bible that's mentioned here. God had cursed the ground in the Garden of Eden, but the biggest challenge of the narrative is why Canaan was cursed rather than Ham, and the concealed details of the shameful incident bear the same reticence of Reuben's sexual transgression. What did Reuben do?
Slept with his father's concubine.
A little louder.
Slept with his father's concubine.
Reuben slept with his father's concubine, and he did that for the purpose of, he did that for a reason.
To show his power.
He was trying to get the blessing of the firstborn. If he could grab hold of that, then he would that's what he thought he was doing, taking possession of it. He was sadly mistaken, and it was kind of like doing oh my gosh, Reuben, what'd you do that for? That was really dumb. So this is called a face palm. A face palm. Wait, what? It's kind of a universal euphemism, idiom. What does it mean? Oh, duh. Big mistake, yes. It refers to the physical gesture of putting one's hand up against his face. It's kind of like hiding, right? And it's used mainly to express feelings of stupidity and frustration about oneself or others. Okay, Reuben, he made a huge mistake. So the curse of the Canaanites, the curse of Canaan. The Canaanites became known for their shameless depravity in sexual matters. Does that sound like a curse being handed down through the line? And when Joshua, after Moses invaded their land, he proved to be God's instrument of punishment for the Canaanites. It's kind of like the Canaanites became the bad boys of the planet. Right? However, there was one Canaanite that wound up in the lineage of Yeshua. I think. Anybody know her name? Rahab. Rahab, that's right. So there isn't anything that we can, that tells me there's nothing that we can do that takes us so far that God can't forgive you. Now, if I was God, That would be a different story. Or if Steve was God, we know that would be a different story. Right? But thank goodness we're not God. And God says his way, and Steve isn't. God is not, he says, my ways are not your ways. And he's not willing that any should perish. But if their behavior doesn't turn around, they will. So the end result of Ham's and or Canaan's actions caused Ham to be removed from receiving any blessing from Noah. Ham received no blessing. And Canaan, his son, was pronounced to be the future father of slaves. And here it's the Hebrew word Eved, to Shem. Putting it all together, it seems most likely that Canaan, Ham's son, was not involved in the act, but the curse was placed upon him, possibly because he was Ham's favorite son. That's kind of a big thing. Do you think it was Ham? I mean, was Canaan that did it? You think it was Yeah, well, I could go into some really X-rated kind of theories and just kind of, this is really awful, but they're out there. If you want, I'll let you go search those out for yourself if you want to. Go take a shower afterwards. But anyway, but 925 here, that's the first recorded human curse, okay? So, who's blessed and who's cursed? God blesses Noah and the sons. He blessed them. God blessed Noah and the sons. It's probably good for Ham that he did, because all those descendants can come back through that blessing. And God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, you guys go out and be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. That was the blessing. Fill this place back up. But Noah curses his grandson Canaan, and he said, cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be to his brothers. And he said, blessed be the Lord God of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. He made that definite kind of a proclamation. So what else have we got here? At the age of 500 years, Noah had to wait until he was 500 years old to be a father. And at the age of 600, the flood comes 100 years later, right? And lasts for a year and 10 days, and he gets off the ark. And then he's going to live another 350 years after the flood. Okay? So he dies somewhere in his 950th year. Okay, so now I'm going to tell you about chapter 10. And we're not going there because all it is names and numbers and all these descendants, and we don't need to know about all of that, so we're not going to read it. But we're just going to talk through a few of it. So we've already established we are all Noah's descendants, somehow or another. And the Bible proclaims that all of human race has descended from Noah's family, and we are all descendants from one of those three boys. So, Genesis 10, what does that section do? This section gives some of the most it details the distribution of Noah's descendants over the earth after the flood. And this chapter contains one of the oldest, this is important, this is a key point, if not the oldest, tell me what that word is, ethnological?
Ethnological.
Table in the literature of the ancient world. Almost all the names in that old document that's on your paper, on your study notes there, in this chapter have been found in archaeological discoveries in the last century and a half. That's remarkable. We're talking after the flood. We're talking 1,000 years after creation. And almost all these names have been found in archaeological digs. Hello? Does that kind of give credence that the Bible is true? I would think so. I would think so. Okay. The Table of Nations, it's horizontal. It's a horizontal genealogy rather than a vertical one. And the purpose is not primarily to trace your ancestry, but it shows political and geographical and ethnic affiliations among the tribes. It shows about Nimrod. We'll get into him in chapter 11. A people, Asher, we'll be talking about them later. The Jebusites, that becomes a city of the Jebusites, and a nation of Elam, and we'll get into all that in the weeks to come. But I like this picture because God built nations out of families. You ever line up the kids and, okay, let's take a family picture, and it winds up kind of looking like that. And led by the dad, right? Okay. So chapter 10 is going to serve as kind of a prehistory bridge between, so it's going to talk about Japheth, it's going to talk about Ham, it's going to talk about Shem. Okay? Big question is, which way did they go? Which way did they go? Which way did they go? North, south, east, or west? And so here, I've just, and you don't have to know this, but just so give you a kind of a visual glimpse. So this is the family of Shem. If they started out here in the, by the Tigris River, somewhere in there, this is where the direction that they went. Okay? The ark was found, I think, they think it is up here in this area, but yeah. So the spread of the peoples, kind of from the Fertile Crescent, that direction. Notice it goes way over, Shem goes way over here. Oh. Yay, Jeff. And we've got Japheth here. He's kind of going all over the place. All right. I want you to look at some interesting names. Names that we're familiar with when vis-a things of prophecy. Togarmah and Magog, the Ashkenaz. Here's that area. Meshach, Tubal. This is up here by Spain. Tarshish is Spain. Tubal.
Tarshish.
Tarshish. Yep.
Is that it?
Here's England sitting up here all by itself. Okay, this is the Black Sea. Here's Gomer. Okay. Just as a visual cue here a little bit. These are the families of Ham, and they're gonna. This is here in Egypt and Libya, Ethiopia down here. Saudi Arabia, Mecca. And here's all the Canaanite people. Canaanites. Does this sound familiar? This is all in the land of what would be modern Israel. The Jebusites, the Amorites, the Girgashites. Okay. Just to give you an idea. All right. So here's the geological table of the descendants of Noah. Japheth up here. People. Ham. And Shem. And we come down here. Here's Eber. Here's Abram down here. Okay. I don't even know who these people are. Shelpa. This is why we're not going to go through and name all these names, because we can't pronounce them anyway. So there you go. All right.
I recognize the name of the last one. Joe Bob.
Joe Bob.
Yeah.
Joe Bob and Jim Bob, his brother, right? Billy Bob. Okay. Okay. And Cush begot Nimrod, and Nimrod was not just a powerful man on the earth at the time, but he was a very tyrannical leader of men, and he establishes the world's first post-flood empire. We're going to talk about him in just a few minutes, and yada, yada, yada. 10:19. Okay, this is just talking about how the borders of the Canaanites are actually the borders of modern-day Israel. So what happened to them? We'll find that out in a few weeks, few months maybe. Their cup of iniquity would be full one day, and it would, at some point in time, it would be time for the Canaanites to be evicted out of the land that we now know as the land of Israel. Okay. So Nimrod, and what does his name mean? His name literally means we shall rebel. And we'll get into that here in just a few minutes. I want to show you the families from which these people came. And see this land? We're talking about a piece of ground that before, probably, I don't know when this happened, before the flood or after the flood. I think it was before the flood. I think that's what happened during the flood. When it was all kind of in one big piece of ground. And I want you to remember in the 2nd chapter of Genesis, it talks about how in the Garden of Eden there were 4 rivers that divided the land. These were the rivers, the Pishon, and that's this one right here. Okay, the Gihon, That happens to Gihon. Does that sound familiar to you from Jerusalem? It goes right through Jerusalem. Gihon. The Hiddekel. This one right here. And then the Euphrates. This one runs along here. Okay? Watch what happens. Let's put this to motion. Let's see what happens. Oh. Don, Myra's husband, several years ago had taken this out, and he, what did he do? He cut it apart, or he put it together, or something?
I was reading all this and about the continents splitting apart and everything, and he took a world map and he cut it apart, and he put all the pieces on the dining room table, and he just put them all back together, and he said, "This is the shape of a human heart." And the Lord said to him, "Yeah, and it broke my heart to break it."
To flood this out. So God has a heart. It's man's wicked heart that needs to be set into place too, right? It's fixing. But it's the shape of, look at this. Look at the main, are these arteries? Arteries that come into and leave the heart. There's 4 of them. 4 main rivers. Watch what happens. And God, we're now living in the days where He's taking the pieces of men's hearts and He's putting them back together. Okay? Watch. Watch what happened. Look what we did. Look what man's rebellion did. Here we go. I think this is the next one. Here we go. Ready?
So if you put that all back together, it's going to be a rough ride.
It's going to be, that's what's happening. Ouch. Hang on. Yeah.
Well, maybe that's what the New Jerusalem's all about.
Maybe that's what the New Jerusalem's all about.
Taking the earth and just bringing it all back in together.
Yeah. It could be.
It would be off balance.
Have you got a chance to look at that extending earth yet? Because the other coastline lines up just as well as the...
Does it? Okay.
Yeah, with the smaller earth.
With the smaller earth even. I think I'm going to talk to you about that later, but I think I found something from the 90s that the guy was talking about that. I think so. Yeah. Anyway, interesting stuff, huh? Yeah, one was Peleg, for in his days the earth was divided. That's 1025. So, okay, so these are the generations of this. This 10:1 starts out this way. 10:1. Could somebody read this? Like Myra, could you?
These are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and unto them were sons born after the flood.
Okay, that's 10:1. This is the table of nations. Now this is the last verse in 10:32. Read that one, Bill.
There are families of the sons of Noah after their generations in the nations, and by these were the nations divided in the earth after the flood.
Okay, so the nations were all divided at some point in time after the flood. Okay, from these 3 guys came all these nations. That's the important part. There isn't anybody else. It's from these 3 guys that these nations came. Okay, now what we're going to do, Steve, before you put that egg in your mouth.
Now I have egg on my face.
Now you got egg on your face. Yeah. Okay. Oh, good. We're doing well on time.
11:1,
Yes.
you said?
11. I think I want you to read the whole chapter. I think we're just going to go through the whole chapter this time. Just the whole
Now
thing.
the whole world had one language and a common speech. Hallelujah. As people moved eastward, they found a plain in Shinar and settled there. They said to each other, "Come, let's make brick and bake them thoroughly." They used brick instead of stone and tar for mortar. Then they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens so that we can make a name for ourselves. Otherwise, we will be scattered over the face of the whole earth." But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower the people were building. The Lord said, "If as one people speaking the same language they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language so that they do not understand each other." So the Lord scattered them from there all over the earth, and they stopped building the city. That is why it is called Babel. because there the Lord confused the language of the whole world. From there the Lord scattered them over the face of the whole earth. This is the account of Shem's family line. 2 years after the flood, when Shem was 100 years old, he became the father of Arphaxad.
Okay, I tell you what,
yes.
We're going to skip all those names from make a mark from 10 to 26.
Okay.
So these are the genealogy of Shem, okay? And then we're going to go down to 27.
Terah's family.
Yeah, Terah's. This is the genealogy of Terah, who's still in Shem's family.
So this is the account of Terah's family line. Terah became the father of Abram, Norah, and Haran. Nahor. And Haran became the father of Lot. While his father Terah was still alive, Haran died in Ur of the Chaldeans, in the land of his birth. Abram and Norah both married. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife was Milcah. She was the daughter of Haran, the father of both Milcah and Iscah. Now Sarai was childless because she was not able to conceive. Terah took his son Abram, his grandson Lot, son of Haran, and his daughter-in-law Sarai, the wife of his son Abram, and together they set out from Ur of the Chaldeans to go to Canaan. But when they came to Haran, they settled there. Terah lived 205 years, and he died in Haran.
Okay, so we're just going to look at a little bit of this here. 70. In the Jewish tradition, there are 70 nations that came about after the flood out of those three guys, and they're all corresponding to the names in chapter 10. And all the persons belonging to Jacob who came into Egypt, belonging to Jacob now, way into the future, his own offspring, not including Jacob's sons' wives, were 66 persons in all, and the sons of Joseph who were born to him in Egypt were 2, and all the persons of the house of Jacob that came into Egypt were 70. So 70 happens to be a very important number in a lot of different ways. 70 nations, and from those 70 nations are going to come 70 people from this family. God's going to call out Abram as his single guy to start again in another new beginning. Abram, you're it. I'm starting with you in all the world. And so 70 is a big deal. So 70 is going to become an important number this afternoon because if all of you who can stay, and will stay, I'm going to play a little bit of a video that Rhonda sent down to me last night, and I think it's important. And it's from Mark Biltz, who's written yet another book. And he's going to talk about it. And 70, there's a blood red moon going to happen tomorrow night, right? Tomorrow night means that there's going to be an eclipse of the moon, full eclipse, and it's a big super moon because you only have a full eclipse of the moon on a full moon, and a blood red moon at that. And so the last time that happened was 2 years ago tomorrow. It's to the very date. To the very date. And 2 years ago, on that very date, Donald Trump was elected president. And today he's addressing the nation. We don't know what he's going to say, but we're going to watch it at 1 o'clock this afternoon. Keep track of the time, somebody. And the guy was born on July, on the 7th, is that right? Donald Trump.
Biden Day, wasn't it? 14th?
Oh, I thought his birth had something to do with sevens, too. I could be wrong. Okay, I'm wrong.
I'm 1 month and 2 days older than he is.
You're 1 month and 2 days older than he.
Look what he did with his.
Yeah, but he can't play the piano.
You know, yeah. Okay, so at any rate, we're gonna watch that this afternoon. He'll bring that all in. And what he does, he's talking about the Antichrist. Okay, Yeah, it's his 70th year, and this is the 70th year of Israel being a nation, and he turned 70, and it was 2 years, I don't know, all this, it could mean nothing, it could mean something, I don't know, but I would invite you to sit down and watch that with me this afternoon, and then you can tell me what's going on. I would appreciate that. But, so why did I say that? Oh, 70. 70 is an important number. This is a big deal with this is a big deal with God, 70. And I'm 70. Maybe that's what. Yeah. Believe it or not, I know it's hard to believe. Now that we have 70 nations from 3 sons of Noah, hang on, because this is about to go. We're about to go for another ride for us, and this taxi cab driver is going to drop us right off at the house of Noah, Abram, which is what Steve just did for us. I guess he wants a tip. He's from New York, yeah, right. So understanding the rest of the Bible literally depends on this important meeting where we get dropped off at, because it's all about that. So the chronology of the sages say that Abraham was born in 1948 BC, after creation. After creation. And he died in 2006 from the creation of man. So Abraham was alive for the last 58 years of Noah's life. And you'd have to just do some math to do that. Arithmetic, not even math, not mathematics, just arithmetic. And that happened. So chapter 11 is the end of the first section of Genesis. Okay, so we've gone through Genesis 1 and 2 was about creation. I put this on your notes, I think. Genesis 3 is about the fall of man. Genesis 4 is the story of Cain and Abel and the first murder. Genesis 5 and 6 is about Noah. 7 and 8 about the flood. 9 and 10 about the post-flood world, the Tower of Babel. And then so part 2, and we've got 50 chapters in Genesis. Part 2 is going to be about Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. These 60 guys that go down into, or 70 guys that go down into Egypt. Okay? So the whole story, the whole Bible, it took 11 chapters to get us to be prepared for Abraham, right? To get us prepared for Abraham. And then the rest of the Bible is about this story, about this one family of which we are grafted into or are part of. Either way. Okay, so history moves along in spurts, and so does Torah. Sometimes we have a lot of detail and sometimes we don't. Example, the Revolutionary War in America has thousands of volumes written about it, but it only lasted a few years, right? The Dark Ages in Europe that lasted 500 years there's very little known about what happened during those Dark Ages. It was very dark, okay? Torah thus far, by the numbers, it's 10 generations from Adam to Noah took about 1,500 years. From Noah to Abraham took about 450 years. Men's lives were getting smaller, shorter. And there's about 2,000 years of history in 11 chapters. So it doesn't just serve as a history book as much as it teaches us about life and the human condition and God's role in all of man's foibles. And there are many, right? Foibles? I love that word. It's a great word. Okay. So this is how the Jewish sages look at this, from Adam to Abraham. They're not in disagreement with this. They call it the chaos years. From Adam to Abraham, chaos lasted 2,000 years. From Abraham to Yeshua, they call it the Torah years, 2,000 years, the development of Israel. Yeah. And from Yeshua to now, they call that, this is the Jewish way of looking at the sages, looking at it. Yeshua to now, isn't that interesting? From Yeshua to now, this is a Jewish viewpoint, they call this the Messianic era. The process of redemption and perfecting the world. Tikkun olam, fix it. Right? Okay. So, introducing Nimrod, the great hunter. We're going to talk about this guy for just a few minutes. He's a great hunter. It does not mean that he hunted animals. This guy hunted people. Oh, bounty hunter? Bounty hunter, okay. He hunted others that he felt were weaker than he. Okay, the guy had a complex. And he was a fearsome warrior, and in his tyranny there was no opposition. And he was a prototype for all empirical tyrants that were to follow.
So maybe not so much a bounty hunter, but more of an assassin.
He was full of himself and full of pride, right? Okay. So a funny thing happened after the flood. There are only a couple verses about Nimrod, but there's a lot behind the scenes that's going on. And chapter 10 tells us how the nations developed from single source of Noah's family. And chapter 11 tells us why they developed as a diverse nations rather than one unified people. Okay? So, one language, one speech. Sounds good. But mankind is doing exactly the opposite of what God had commanded him to do. God said, he blessed them, he blessed the sons of Noah, and he said, go forth and multiply and what? Fill up the earth. Right? Fill up the earth. And what they did was they all kind of gathered together and made big cities. That sound familiar? Okay. We're the people out here in the middle of the country that are called the flyover people, as opposed to the big population centers in New York and Los Angeles. Think about it. This is a form of rebellion, and cities tend to be places of rebellion. Do they not? Yes, they do. One lip or one language. They were speaking, these people were beginning to speak against God as one people. It was like the days of Noah all over again. All in one chapter? Really? A lot happens in 350 years. Of all the nations, God is the God of Israel. Nothing has changed in the character of man since the flood. The thoughts of his heart were only continually, or evil continually, and they still are. Without God living in you, without the Spirit of the Holy One living in you, without having given your broken pieces of your heart to God, your little heart would just be evil continually. True? Yep. Okay. Man's natural bent. It's our natural bent. It's natural. We're just doing what comes naturally. Okay? The deep state is just doing what comes naturally. They're evil. It's natural to them. They want to be a tyrant. Is that not true?
Yes.
There you go. They're replicating the spirit of Nimrod for sure. Man's natural bent is disobedience and rebellion against his Creator. Okay? And both chapter 10 and 11 function to describe those nations which in the end, what? They're going to grow into be Israel's enemies. Are you surprised? We shouldn't be surprised. We go, oh my gosh, is that what chapter 10 and 11 are explaining? Yes. There's going to be a group of people that God calls out, and they're going to call out from the family of Abraham. And from that one family, he's going to build a nation. And the rest of the nations, if they're not part of Israel, will be against him. That shouldn't be that difficult to understand.
You're either in the boat or you aren't.
How many lines are there to choose from? Two. You can't have a foot in both camps. No. No. All right, so dwelling in complacency. In cities, people forget that food comes from the farmer. They think it comes from the local grocery store. Well, just go to the store and get some, right? They don't remember it comes from the farmer. So God said nothing which they purpose to do will be impossible for them, making it appear as though man was not actually dependent upon God to supply his needs. The very next breath you take, very next breath you take, depends on God giving it to you. I can attest to that. I went to the dentist this week to have my teeth worked on, the oral surgeon guy, and they gave me nitrous oxide.
How was that?
He said, breathe deep. And so I did.
Did you start laughing?
No.
Do you want more?
It was an interesting experience, that's all I can say. Anyway, the very breath Next breath you take depends on God giving it to you. Let's just put it that way. All right. God supplies all your needs according to his riches and glory, right? So most people don't recognize their need for God. Most people, do you realize? And hopefully we don't do this. Hopefully you don't do this between, I don't know, between Monday morning and Friday morning. You just get up and just go, oh, then I can be about your business without giving one thought to God. I hope we don't do that. Thank you, Lord, for this morning. Thank you that I woke up this morning. Thank you that I can walk across the room this morning. Thank you that there's food in my refrigerator this morning, right?
Thank you for my coffee.
Thank you. Oh. Thank you for coffee. Thank you for coffee. Okay, anyway. Genesis 1 through 11, 1 through 9. This is literally a blueprint for how tyranny arises. Okay, and we're going to take a look at this. I got a film clip for you to look at here in just a minute. So from the historical view, if you don't believe in God, in the God of creation, if you don't believe in the God of creation, and do you have to believe in the God of creation? You do. Jeff does. Jeff, you do because you're a believer. But does the average Joe Sixpack have to believe in the God of creation? No.
Well, we're commanded to. God gives us free will.
He gives us free will, so we don't have to, but life will be much better if you do. It'll make a lot more sense. All right, so if you don't believe in the God of creation, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and you take him out of the picture, then you just have the little g government of man. That's all you got going for you. Now you're dependent upon the government of man. For man needs some method of being organized. We need some kind of an organization around us. Tyrants want to be a centralized government. This should start making a lot of sound familiar with what's going on in our country today. That will have control over the group. That would be socialism. And any socialist, Nimrodian, in order to develop a central controlled tyranny, you have got to expel God from your population. Because Nimrod and God just won't, they just aren't going to share. Nimrod doesn't want to share, and God's not going to share his glory with anybody either. That's the good news, right? So if you get rid of God, what do these people possess? Very few things. They will serve at the tyrant's pleasure. I'm going to show you that here in just a minute. Definition of tyranny is arbitrary or unrestrained exercise of power or despotic abuse. The government or rule of a tyrant or absolute ruler. A state ruled by a tyrant or absolute ruler. An oppressive or unjustly severe government. Undue severity or harshness. That's the definition of tyranny. North Korea comes to mind, right? Yes, okay. It happens over and over and over. This has happened over and over and over and over down through history. Note to self, the Tower of Babel did not just happen. It is the prototype of all the tyrannies to come if you follow history. History of Greece and France, yeah, China, Russia, Germany, North Korea. It's happened over and over and over again. And how many of you in verse 2, 11 verse 2 says, and it came to pass as they journeyed from the east or to the east? From? I think I have, in my Bible, I have crossed that word out and put to, because I think it's to the east. Is that right?
I don't know. I need the Hebrew.
You need to see the Hebrew? Okay. From the east. They found a plain in the land of Shinar and they dwelt there.
They were coming off the mountain.
Yeah. I'm not going to do this one.
In another verse, in another translation,
Here. They traveled east. Yeah. That's to the east. Yeah. So enter stage left here. I'm going to answer my own question. Enter from stage left. Nimrod the tyrant equals, enter from stage left, the east. It equals going away from God to chaos. By chaos, they meant that civilization had no form. no basis in morality. It did not coalesce. When it tried, it did so in negative fashion. There was nothing good about it. Nimrod. Okay. I'm going to show you. He wants to build a tower to the heavens, and he's competing. Nimrod was literally competing with God. Do you realize that this spirit, so it's a spirit that's controlling this man, right? We will rebel, okay? All right. He's competing with God. He wants the people to look up to him and not God, not to God. If a government starts supplying all your needs, medical and education and housing, and just to give them all, you just give them all your money, and they promise to take care of you, which is what the left is beginning to say, are they not? Well, guess what? It sounds like the dairy farmer to the cows. Give me all your milk and I'll give you hay. Okay, when the government becomes the zookeeper, it becomes the ruling class versus the ruled classes, and they don't follow the same rules that they wrote for you. They don't follow the same rules that they wrote for you. If they followed the same rules that they wrote for you, then Congress would not be collecting a paycheck. Amen. Right? A big paycheck. And they would be giving the TSA guys da-da-da-da. Okay. All right, God wanted them to move throughout the earth, but they banded together in order to defy God's command. They selected the best land that they could find, and they staked their claim in the land of Shinar, a place that becomes associated with evil. So I think at this point in time is where I'm going to show you. This is what it looks like. Da-da-da-da. Here we go. Here's the one I was looking at, Kadim. And it came to pass as they journeyed from the east, but it shouldn't be from, it should be to the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar. Okay? Are you happy with that? You still don't?
I don't know. I haven't
You still haven't seen it in the Hebrew. Okay. All right.
I'm
Kadim.
not saying a word.
I know. You're not saying a word. You keep your mouth shut. Okay. Genesis 11:3. And they said, let's go make bricks and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone and slime for mortar. So they're building with bricks. Let's make bricks, and they're going to burn them, make them, burn them. And the opposite of that is Yeshua saying, I didn't put a brick in Zion, I put a stone, the foundation, a stone in Zion, a tried stone, a precious cornerstone. And he that believeth will not make haste. So whoever thought that that's what that Isaiah 28:16 would be what Genesis 11:3 is talking about. There was a bunch of people. They were speaking one language, and they were building a tower, and they were building it in defiance, but they were building it in defiance. And the us, did you notice it was the us? And the us said, boy, we better go down and see what they're doing. So they came down and see what they were, and they were building this thing in defiance to him out of baked brick. We often think if I were just to come in here and say, talk to me about baked bricks, you would have told me what the Israelites were doing in Egypt. They were having to make bricks, right, to build supply cities for the Egyptians. It's almost kind of like the same thing. And and God had given them specific directions. I want you guys to multiply and spread out and multiply across the earth and fill this earth back up because everybody's gone. No, we're going to stay right here, and we're going to build a tower because this tyrant, Nimrod, this hunter of men, wants to control everybody and everything. Yeah, oh, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, so I looked it up in Hebrew.
Looked it up in Hebrew.
Okay, so it says 11:2, it came to pass as they journeyed from the east. And that's what it says in Hebrew. From the east with a mem, from and away from. So, away from the east.
They went away from the east.
No, they came as they journeyed away from the east. It came from the east, away from the east.
Okay.
So it sounds like they had spread out, and they came back
They came back together.
against God
Okay.
from the east. And isn't it things that come from the east are not...
Are not good, right?
Not good.
That's the dangerous part, the
Yeah.
stuff that comes from the east, right? Yeah, from the east, yep. Okay. Way from the east. I have to mark my Bible. Oh dear.
So Susan, how many languages are there in the world?
I have no idea.
More than 70, but 70 originally. How long did it take them to
6,000.
build Babylon?
There are 6,500 languages on the earth, with 2,000 of those languages with less than 1,000 people speak. So 4,500 languages generally spoken. I just looked this up. And the most spoken language is Mandarin.
Chinese, yeah, that would make sense. Yeah, Chinese, yeah. Okay. Well, so Babel means to confuse, and if we confuse the letters, let us make bricks, you get let us confuse. So I was sitting there minding my own business, putting this thing together this morning, and the Lord, it was as though He was standing in the room and saying this to me. You are living stones, you're not baked bricks, which is the last line on your thing. Keep that in mind, okay? He made you as an individual. He's given you all the talents that you have.
I said,
yes.
What you did there is very important because that's one of the characteristics of Hebrew is that you can take a word and reverse the letters.
Mix them up.
Laban is Lamed Bet Nun.
Here, let me. For those who don't know, just hang on just a second. For those who don't know Hebrew,
yeah, that's
Lamed Bet, final Nun.
Nun. That's Laban. And if you just reverse it, it's Nun Bet Lamed. And when you can do that, it's a very powerful statement. So let us make bricks and let us confuse. Those two words are very closely stuck together because you can reverse them like that.
So the people are saying, let us make bricks. That's what the people are saying as a group. Let us make bricks, and they'll all look alike, and then we're going to build this thing up so we can raise our fist in God's face, essentially. Look how big and powerful we are. And Nimrod can climb to the top of the tower, and he can look and survey over, see all the kingdoms that he's a tyrant over, right? And then, but God says, no, I don't think so. So this us, which is the same us as from Genesis chapter 1, let us confuse them. And it's taken these many years, and the Hebrew language as a language, as a spoken language, it was a study language for forever, but as a spoken language almost disappeared. What's the guy's name that brought it back?
Oh, Ben Yehuda.
Ben Yehuda, yeah, Ben Yehuda, who has a very, very famous street named after him, because when he came back to Israel, he said, and he got married and he had children. These children of mine children of Ben Yehuda, children of Israel, will only hear Hebrew language.
Yeah, very fitting name.
Very, yeah.
What year was that?
1800s, the end of the 1800s.
Into the 1800s, yeah. Into the 1800s, and those kids, and literally, it's that family that brought back Hebrew to the world. Okay, so it's been gone. So guess what language God used when these guys were speaking? And before He confused the language, I'm sure it was Hebrew.
One of the proofs of that is that all the names, you gave us all the names of all these people, all the way back to the very beginning of the Bible, are all Hebrew names.
They're all Hebrew names.
So
There you go.
yeah,
I didn't even know that.
You didn't
You know
know
that. Yay! Okay. There you go. There you go. So here's the point. If you go against God, you can count on achieving everything He wants you to avoid. That's a very, write that, you can quote me on that. Okay? If you go against God, you'll wind up doing everything He doesn't want you to do. Okay. Tower of Babel. You're living stones, you're not baked bricks. That's what he gave me this morning. 1 Peter 2:5. You yourselves are being built like living stones into a spiritual temple. You're being made into a holy priesthood to offer up spiritual sacrifices that are acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. The stuff or mortar that holds us together is the same mortar that holds the universe together. He's the one who holds everything together, Yeshua. Holding it together. Could somebody read this? Who can read this? Babel, can you read this?
Sure.
From where?
Colossians 1, verses 16 and 17. For by Him all things were created, both in the heavens and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions, or rulers or authorities. All things have been created through Him and for Him. He is before all things, and in Him all things hold together.
Okay. And Myra brought this into a Hebrew class about, 3 years ago. The thing that medicine or science or chemists or whatever have found it. They found it, what it looks like, the thing that holds all of us together. And guess what it looks like? It's called laminin, right? And it's defined in the Webster's Medical Dictionary as the glycoprotein. Maria understands that. She's probably the only one in the room that does. Glycoprotein, that is a component of connective tissue. It promotes all the cells to hold together. That's what sticks us together. So when he says, and I saw the holy city, Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. It's a city coming down out of heaven that's going to change everything, not a tower that's going up. Not being built up to heaven. And you know that big tyrant-type men, they play a game around the earth. It's called Who Can Build the Biggest Building? And they've been playing this since they've invented the elevator. Since Mr. Otis invented the elevator. Who can build the tallest building? The Empire State Building, the Sears Building, da-da-da-da-da. Now the biggest one is over in Dubai. I think it's about ready. I've heard a couple guys talking about this on the radio. Yeah, it's a hotel. And they looks like a sail. Is it a kilometer high or something like that? I mean, it's so many. Yeah. They say that whoever has the tallest, whatever country, whatever government has the tallest building, they will be the ones that will be in charge of everything. And that's the game that rich men play. Huh? I don't know. I'm not sure how many. But I thought they said it was a kilometer high on the radio. I think. Is it Dubai? Is that what you said?
It's one of the Arab countries. I can't remember, but
yeah.
Burj Khalifa,
2,717 feet. Does that count the little mast on top, the antenna? That's what he's doing. Oh. Dubai? Dubai? Okay. That sounds about right.
4 floors. Wow. 35 seconds, the world's fastest elevator.
Oh. 35 seconds? Remind me not to go to Dubai. I don't want to do that.
Susan?
Yes. Lady in the second row.
Herod understood this principle: the higher you build, you control things. And he built a fortress called Herodian that overlooks Bethlehem. And so he had this high mountain overlooking Bethlehem, and he didn't do anything. And the king of the world was born in a little
house or something.
Down in the valley, in the field.
He wasn't high. He was right down on ground.
He was lowly. Wow.
Yeah.
How about that? See?
From a military standpoint, you take the high ground and usually win war.
Okay, it's odd but strange but true. Odd that God had to come down to see what man had built up into heaven. Think about that for just a minute. God is above everything. He's above everything. He's outside of us. Okay? So man made bricks and God confused their language and he scattered them abroad and they ceased building that city for a while, at any rate, right? The oldest signs of civilization, I guess they've been found in the Euphrates Valley for more recent record. This would be consistent with the dispersion from the Tower of Babel. And there's a couple things I want to show you here. Here we go. He scattered them abroad, and they left off building the city. Nimrod was Noah's great-grandson. He's a defiant man, and he founded a city instead of scattering across the earth, and the Tower of Babel was begun, but it was never finished. It's never finished. So God confused the language, and the people scattered. He scattered the people, but what did they take with them? They took with them the signature thing that they were building. They took pyramids and sun worship. And let's look around the world. I want to show you this. I did this a couple years ago, last time we were here. But it's very interesting. They looked around the world and they all retained Nimrod's counterfeit, even as time went on. Okay? Pyramids around the world. Remember the land's all scattered? Here we go. Let's see. This is in China. They all look rather like pyramids. This is in Bosnia, a town in Bosnia. El Salvador, Mexico, Rome. This looks rather familiar. It's on every one of your dollars, right? Guatemala. Tell me where that is. It's in Greece somewhere. Hellenico? Cairo. Those are the ones we're familiar with, I suppose. How about North Korea? San Francisco. The World Trade Center, then and now. This is the European Parliamentary building in Strasbourg, France. They're real proud of the fact that they made this look like the Tower of Babel. By the famous painting. Yeah. So at any rate, from Eden, meaning cast out, all the way to Babel, which means cast out and scattered around the earth. The next thing that comes is the regathering. It'll come full circle. God desires unity for man, but unity of His making, not man's making. This deep state stuff, this one world order stuff, that is not God's plan. Obviously. So this parashah shows that God's promise concerning the seed of the woman cannot be thwarted by the confusion and scattering of the nations. The seed of the woman, Yeshua, will crush the head of the serpent. That's for sure. Okay. And once again, we're just going to end with that. That's the whole thing. This is a kind of a blow-up of just this part down here with Shem. And we'll pick up with Abram next week. And I think we'll leave it at that. Ta-da. So I think what I'm going to do here is this. God's got a plan, and his plan is not going to be thwarted. That's for darn sure. So let's just kind of, as we're closing up, let's just kind of, because we're upside down and backwards today anyway. So stand up or listen to it or sing it or whatever if you want to. But it's a good song. He's laying a cornerstone. Joel. Turn me down. There you go.